Training. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you for having me today, Jamie. I'm excited.
Okay, well, I'm glad to have you here. And if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take about 20 minutes of your time. Hopefully that was good. Talk about Sandler training. And then at the end, give people a good understanding of why Sandler training, what Sandler training does and how that would help them and their companies. If that's okay with you, we can start.
Sure. I love it. Starting really strong with a nice upfront contract. It's great.
Well, I thank you for that, and I have to give you guys credit for that because you taught me that. So tell me, let's start with why would a company invest in training?
I mean, that's a good question. And it kind of spans a lot of people. Some believe that they need to invest in their people for different reasons. For me, I always say that an investment in your people and yourself has the biggest return. So a lot of people do things within their business to try and fix issues when really sometimes what you need to do is listen to the people in your business. Where are the issues that they're seeing? Where are their biggest challenges and struggles? And then maybe a company like Sandler might be able to help them get over those challenges and struggles and set up something great and get a good return out of it.
Okay, well, practicing my Sandler training, can you give me some examples of things like that?
Sure. So a lot of times businesses will come to us and they'll tell us that they're just not getting in front of enough new people, meaning their salesmen are out there or sales professionals are out there and they're just not getting enough new leads into the pipeline. Generally, that's an attitude about the way that they're approaching the business. And Sandler likes to really concentrate on the behaviors. What are the simple 5-step behaviors that we could always follow, create that checklist, and be able to get things in the pipeline, be able to get a talk or a conversation, turn it into a lead. Concentrating on those behaviors at the base level, that's where you really see some change.
Okay, could you share those five steps, or is that the secret sauce?
So that's a great question. I say 5. It actually changes depending on exactly what the situation is, depending on your vertical or where your business is and what the level of, I guess, penetration is. But for me, there's 5 easy steps that I always follow. Number 1, be honest. Be honest at all times. People can read right through it. Number 2, tonality. How you're approaching somebody, the way you're saying things is massive. And it really kind of drags one conversation to a lead or a conversation to a see you later. And then an upfront contract. We talked about it before, right? So if any conversation, make sure that you're nailing down the time, make sure you're listening to their agenda, what they want to accomplish in the conversation, and then make sure that you have a couple things of where we're going to go with this conversation next. Everyone's clear on where they're going to go. And of course, my favorite one, be authentic. So being authentic of who you are, what you do, that's a great way of bringing it from one step to the other. And now here is the special sauce I'm not supposed to give away. They say that everybody reads, hears, and learns more at a 5th grade level. So when you're speaking to people, if you have a bunch of superlatives and super fine words that are great in your vertical, not everybody understands them. Bring it down to a 5th grade level, tends to land more.
Wow, that's interesting. It reminds me of another PSP partner who has several college degrees, and he says exactly that. He says, I have to practice playing my proposal down to the level of someone can understand it. I like to use fancy terms myself. Special sauce, that's my fancy term. All right, so you get a company, they recognize that their salespeople aren't performing to their fullest potential, and they bring you in and you do training. Back in the old days, pre-COVID, you'd probably bring them into your office, into a conference room, and a presentation room, and you do in-person training. So Do you still do that?
Well, it really depends. I think it's more of a hybrid model, and I think that society has grown vastly in the last 2 to 3 years through the pandemic, post-pandemic. So prior to the pandemic, I would say 99% of training was in person. That's what people knew. That's what they liked because they didn't know any other difference. The pandemic really kind of slingshotted the world of virtual training into the forefront. And this is where we are now. I would say now about 90% of our training is virtual. It just alleviates people having to get out of the job that they're doing to drive somewhere, creating more time constraints on the training itself. So we're able to cut that time out, jump right there on a Zoom, and we're able to develop our training right here. Of course, there are some challenges.
Can you elaborate on those challenges?
So when you're coming to Zoom, obviously engagement is going to be a huge kind of pain point. How do you engage somebody on a long, say 90-minute training? And I say 90-minute because we feel an hour is too short, 2 hours is too long, 90 minutes is right in that sweet spot. And that puts a lot on the trainer to make sure that they're paying attention to the physiological rules, which is every 5 minutes, someone needs to be engaged in your training. This is not a lecture. Every 5 minutes within a 90-minute training, they should have something to do, whether it be writing on the screen, putting something in the chat, raising their hand, participating in an outbreak room, something like that every 5 minutes, which is hard to do as a trainer. So that took us a lot of training on our end to make sure we're there. The other part is making sure that you're single tasking is a great word. By single tasking, I mean, when you're on the computer, I could easily be over here, right? You see a lot of people's faces, and that's about having the camera on, making sure that you're seeing people's faces. I think that that connection, it can't be beat in person, but having your camera on gives you a little bit more personality. And we could see when you say something and the eyebrows go up, we know you might have a question or some inclination that you like that idea. So those are some things that we do to make sure that you're engaged the entire time you're with us.
Having done the training with you guys via Zoom during COVID, I noticed that you had multiple Sandler people on the training. When it was in person, did you do the same thing?
Yes, so there was always multiple trainers in person for the most part, unless there's a private program. And let me pull back a little bit. So when I speak of a private program, that means that you have a team that's 15, 20, 40, 100 salespeople. In that, we don't bring you into our facility. We actually come to you, and many of those are done in person still or on your own specific Zoom. And that'll be by one trainer for the most part. In more of the hybrid or public program, which means that you're training with, sometimes 10, sometimes 20 or 30 other sales professionals across the board, across verticals, that allows us to have more trainers involved because a different flavor or a different way you learn or somebody's voice, it could be just that, might strike you a little bit better. And we want to make sure that we're hitting all of our learning modules.
Would you say you're a living example, like Sandler, a living example of the change to how companies sell because of the fact that you had to go from, in person to hybrid to Zoom? It's a whole different world.
Yes. So I might be dating myself here, but I say it's like the hair club for men. Not only am I the president, but I'm also a
Client.
client. I'm a member. That's right. So we say all the time, we're a sales company. Although we're a training company, we are a sales company. So everything we implement, we use ourselves every day, whether it be the upfront contract or questioning strategies or our Zoom interactions. The way that we use them, the way that we teach others to use them, we have to implement every day, which gives us an arm up, because how can I tell you that something works if I don't physically and mentally know that it does on my own experience?
That was another one of the great lines that you guys had, and I always found that to be very interesting. Is Rich would say, if you didn't get the sale, you didn't follow the Sandler protocols. because it's a proven success.
Right. And that's actually something that, if you're a champion of Sandler, you believe in that wholeheartedly. And if you've never dipped your foot in Sandler, or you haven't really gotten to a point of owning the system, it could be one of those, I don't really believe that kind of, I guess, the way that you're saying, the way that you're thinking about Sandler. And I think the reason for that is when you have a system that's really working for you, what he means by that when Rich says that is that you can always look back. Think about any process that you have in your business. When something goes wrong, the point of that process or system is to be able to go back and circle the things that you did not, or that you skipped, or that you did not do well. I was just reading earlier today about processes from the EOS people, and they talk about in-flight checklist, when you're a pilot, and 95% of the time that there is an issue with a flight, they go back and they find that something was skipped or missed on the checklist. That's why processes are so important. It's simple 5-step, 10-step, 7-step processes. As long as you have a process and a strategy around those processes, it's easy to go back. No system, no way to go back.
I'm not so sure you're the right fit for me and my company. Maybe I shouldn't go further with this conversation.
So I see what you're doing there. And that's a great technique. It's called negative reverse selling. And it's also true. If everybody out there can absolutely say that my business, my service, my product is for every single person out there, please let me know who you are, because I'd love to know what that product is. We have to admit it to ourselves and admit it to the people we're working with. We're not always the right fit. Sandler may not be the right fit for you. We do things differently. We see sales differently, and we're not an event. That's my favorite thing I've heard lately. Education is not an event.
Interesting. And yes, you caught me, which I was trying to show you is I love how you talk about, honesty, tonality, and then authentic. Have you ever been called out for Sandlerizing something?
Yes, we call it your Sandler is showing. Recently I had a call, and when you're new to Sandler, which we've all been new to Sandler, anytime any trainer has been new to Sandler at one point or another in their life, and I was brand new, and I had a call, and I said exactly what you said is, we might not be the right fit for you, and I have to really figure that out. And at the end, he said, yeah, have you ever actually turned down business? I wanted to see it. So that was the feedback I got. And, I brought that back to my partners, Rich, Isaac, and Rob Fishman. I said, hey, this is the feed. And they said, yeah, that's because you don't know what you're doing yet. And that's okay. You failed. So now what do we do to fix it? We just had to learn. Your Sandler is going to show. And that's why I talk about it not being an event. Sandler has a book out. It's called You Can't Learn to Ride a Bike in a Seminar. You need to fall. You need to spend time on it. You need to practice. You need to get from knowing it, a little bit of information, to owning it, where it just comes out of your mouth naturally, and you're no longer trying to set a move in there. If I know it's a move, it's a move.
And I've called people on it, and I've been called on it, and in my case, I think it's a great a compliment. It means that I was following, and it's just practice. Talk about that for a second. I won't say who, many years ago, I saw a politician give a speech with no notes. And I was so totally impressed with their presentation, obviously their knowledge of the information, but the fact how strong they were able to present it. And then I saw them about a year later, and they basically gave the same speech. And what I learned is this person, they were giving this speech pretty much, every day, every week and it's not that it was the same speech. It was that they had practiced it and practiced it. and they got it down pat. And I think that's what you're trying to say is there are no shortcuts to Sandler. And I can't take my notes, and I've got many notes referring back to you, as you say, keep you guys engaged. I have many notes, and you can't just wing it. You really have to. I love what you say. You really have to own it. You really have to practice it and be real and authentic about it. So for all of you who are listening, everything he said is absolutely true, but then again, everything he says should be absolutely true. All right, so that wasn't a question. Then let's ask you a question. Let's ask you a question. What's the biggest challenge Sandler is facing today?
It's a great question. You know, when I think about challenges, I think about where are we going to learn? And coming on the forefront is AI. I think people are very worried about AI. People are also very excited about AI. So when the Sandler network looks at AI as being something where you could technically type into an AI bot or get a virtual trainer that is completely AI run, that's a challenge for us, because how do we utilize that in our business to either stay stronger, stay ahead of the curve, and not be obsolete? That's a major challenge that is coming up. And Sandler understands that. And I think recently they've made a huge pivot. Number one, we have partnered with a company called Humanity AQ or Humana AQ, which is a AI driven pipeline company. Basically what they do is they use AI to enhance all of the features that Sandler is teaching you how to use, the behaviors, your attitude, your technique. They use this by enhancing that through emails, through telling you how to write different things, to making sure that you have the right people in the right places. And the statement that has stuck with me from the CEO, David H. Mattson, from Sandler, was AI will not replace salespeople. However, salespeople who use AI will replace salespeople who do not. And that was like, it's time to get up at that challenge. That was his ante of stand up and do it, or sit back and get lost.
It's so true. It's so true. And in my past experience, I was involved with introducing new technologies to an industry, and it was about embracing it and not being afraid of it. And then you'd see your competition and you say, how could they get away? How could they do that? I can't afford it. Well, they were embracing technology. Everything that you've said, everything that I've heard from you and from Sandler, what I always loved, what I always learned is stop answering the questions, or stop trying to solve the problem on the sales call. Can you talk to me about that for a moment?
Sure. So I like to equate it to an iceberg. If you could envision an iceberg, 10% of the iceberg is actually floating above water. 10% is what you see. That 10% is really what most buyers or people are trained to give you. When a sales call is happening, they're trained to give you what's called a surface pain level or a surface issue. These are the things we're dealing with. Now, 90% of sales professionals jump right there. If you have a problem, hey, I'm the one who could solve it, and this is how we solve it. That's kind of the process of the traditional sales process. Find a lead, find an issue, tell them how you solve it. Sandler's a little bit different because we try to get a little bit deeper. And that's about asking the right questions at the right time. The caliber of the questions that you ask will allow you to get deeper in that iceberg. 90% of the iceberg is below. What I mean by that iceberg is the impact on the business, the impact on the individual, and the quantifiable cost that it's costing them to have these issues. If you don't have those three major things, the impact on the business, the impact on the individual, and major cost that it's costing the business, is there really a lot of momentum to make that change? So you have to ask the right questions to get to that bottom 90%. If you get all the way down to what it's costing the business and the personal impact, you're in the top 10% of sales professionals. I'm not saying that Sandler gets everybody we work with down to that top 10%. What I am saying is that we give it a higher percentage of close rates because we teach them to ask the right questions, not answer questions that are surface level.
So two things, and hopefully I can remember them, is
Sure.
when I asked you one of these questions, you paused, you took a sip of water, and you can see you thinking. So rather than just react to the question, you can see that you were processing that question. What is he asking? Why is he asking? And what is he looking for an answer? So again, don't want to give away your special sauce, your secret sauce, but these are things that you're taught, and you see how it was done naturally, authentically. I loved it. So here's the question again. Let's not give away secrets. Is you're a salesman in an auto dealership,
Mhm.
and I walk in. This is like a quiz. I walk in and I walk up to one of the cars. I look at it. You come up to me, and I say to you, does this car have power windows?
That's an interesting question. Why do you ask?
Bingo. And that's a great illustration of what I hoped you would say, because that's what you taught me to say. And I did it a few weeks ago. Someone had asked me a leading question that I knew the answer, but it was a lose-lose question. If I answered one way, he'd be upset. If I answered another way, they'd be upset. And so rather than answer the question, again, practicing what you guys have taught, I asked him, why do you ask? And he explained to me why he was asking his question. And that then allowed me to answer in a safe space.
Right. There are always times when someone is going to ask a question they really just want the answer to. There is a rule. You can always ask questions back, reverse back and things. But if a prospect or a client asks the same question twice, please answer the question. And don't play games. If they ask what time it is, don't say why they ask. Give them the time and then continue on your conversation. There's always the nuances that are there. My favorite thing about Sandler that I've ever heard is verbal jujitsu. Now, jujitsu is not used everywhere you walk. You don't walk around just kicking people. You only use it when you need to use it. So if you have something that's working already, great. But have a plan, because everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And when that no happens, when they throw you on your heels, that's when you need a system to be able to combat that and figure out what's really going on in that conversation. That's where your questions come in key.
So again, this system, this process, it's a roadmap of scenarios.
Yeah.
And as you're sitting in a sales call, if you follow these processes, it will lead you down that path. And as you said, you'll get to that 90% of what they're really asking, and that will allow you to then provide them with the answers that are needed. And the answer could very well be not a good fit. And I will tell you, I have turned down business that is not a good fit. Or I've discontinued doing business that's not a good fit. And you know what happens? You have time to spend on the good business that you have, or on getting better business that you need. Is there one, if there was one secret, that one recommendation, I don't want to call secrets because we don't want to give away secrets. If you want their secrets, I got to tell you people, if you want their secrets, sign up for their training. And that's what this is about. This is about qualifying you to understand, hey, do I need Sandler training? Or maybe needs not the right word. Will I benefit from Sandler training? And the answer, of course, would be if it's a good fit for you. Is there one thing that you want to walk away from today with people knowing about Sandler training?
Yeah, you actually touched on it earlier, and I did want to make sure I came back to that, where most trainings, sales training, in my experience, is about putting you in a box of how to say things, specific techniques. I don't believe in that sort of training. And we almost talked about the idea of scripting, having that when you were talking about the politician, where he had a rote memorization of these are the things I'm going to hit. This is not that. This is not scripting. This is not changing who you are and your personality within sales. That is an extremely important part of how you do business and who you are. This is a structure. So, like you just said before, have a system, which means you have a structure to every call, to every sales meeting, to every agenda, to everything you do. Having a structure allows you to go back and look. If you don't have a system, I guarantee you're part of somebody else's.
Go. All right. So we sit back and we say, this is all pretty good. And Sandler seems to have the right thing. So my favorite question is, how are you qualified to be working at Sandler?
I'll tell you, I got nailed with that question very early on in my career. My first speaking engagement ever. I had walked into a room, and up behind me is a Sandler presentation that I've never given before, and it says "Dare to be legendary." And as soon as I said, "Hi, I'm Ryan Reilly," somebody raised their hand in the back and they said, "What makes you legendary?" And I was stopped in my tracks. For me, I'm a serial learner. And this is how I answered that question. I am a serial learner, meaning I always want to learn more. For Sandler, I came from an education background. I have a counseling background, a master's in counseling. And then I was a director of business development for a company for several years. And that's where I really learned that it has to be education at all times. Reading every book you can. I have a bunch of books behind me. I have more in my reading nook, all about education. And I learned that it's not about teaching people, it's about helping people. And if I could help one person per day, I'm exactly where I need to be.
All right. I like that. I was going to ask that. I was going to ask if you like what you do, but I think you answered it. All right. I got one last question for you, but then again, I lie because there's always one more after that. I can't help it. I always come up with another one on the way. Tell me about the guitars in the background.
So for me, I grew up with a lot of friends who were phenomenal, just musicians. They were really good, and I was super jealous of that. I'm not a person who likes to sit back and not be a part of something. I like to be a part of it. So it took me a long time, but in college, I finally picked up my first guitar, this one with the American flag on it there. And I picked away with it and made my friends crazy. And now what it is for me is it's a release. So when I'm stressed, my mindset is not where it needs to be. I know I'm not doing the right things in every day. I'm screwing up sales calls, or I'm not making the right behaviors. I'm not following my thing. I go back to my happy place. I play a little guitar. I pick around. It makes me feel good. And then I'm right back to work.
All right. All right. All right. As I said, I always come up with another question. How would I do in asking questions?
You did great. You did great. And one of the things that it's clear that you've obviously taken Sandler before is you soften every question, meaning you had a little bit of an explanation of why you're asking the question before asking the question. That really kind of props it up and allows the person to start thinking before they get the question. Doesn't put them on their heels. Makes me feel okay.
Wow, that's the best compliment I got all day. Probably all week. Well, I thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us and to give us a little insight into Sandler training and into you. So if anybody's interested in learning more about Sandler training and Ryan, you could give me a call at 631-241-3958 or email me at jamie@pspturnkeysolutions.com. So thank you, Ryan, and you have a great day.
Pleasure.